Thanks for watching Outdoors Delmarva. I'm Andrew Tawes.
And I'm Chopper Chuck Regner. And Andrew, this time of year we see what looks like an abundance of horseshoe crabs here in the tidal shores of Delmarva, but in other parts of the world they're threatened. So in order to keep track of Delmarva's horseshoe crab population, local researchers go out to take a yearly census. It's a fine evening to count some horseshoe crabs as we head out of the commercial harbor in Ocean City. And our crew will consist of 3. This is the perfect time to count the crabs because they come into the shallows to spawn, and our first of 3 stops this evening will be Skimmer Island in the Isle of Wight Bay, where there's a little wager underway. What's the bet?
We're betting a horchata coffee from Casita Linda. For me, it's more than 500 horseshoe crabs at Skimmer, and then at Assateague more than 800 horseshoe crabs. And he thinks it's going to be less for both. So I'm looking forward to this coffee.
Horseshoe crabs have been around for 480 million years, give or take a week, and were surviving well before and well after the age of the dinosaurs. In the modern age, however, factors such as loss of habitat have impacted their numbers in other parts of the world. Add in hungry shorebirds who gobble up their eggs during the peak spawning period, and you wonder how they survive at all.
So horseshoe crabs are actually a managed species. They're actually used for bait, for eels and conch, and also there's a biomedical product that comes from the blood. And so we want to make sure it's a sustainable resource, that we're not putting undue pressure on it, that there's enough eggs left over for the migrating birds.
How often do you do it a year?
4 lunar periods per year, so we do 8 nights a year. And this year they kind of lagged on a little longer, so we added another round, so actually 10 nights we're going to do this year.
But to Carly, Toulan, and the rest of the gang, the numbers look good.
So when am I going to get that horchata?
You got another beach to go still.
I think I'm going to win that one too.
There was like 4,000 crabs in the area that we sampled just now.
Karl Kidd is here this evening collecting horseshoe crab eggs for educational purposes.
So I'm collecting horseshoe crabs for my classroom to raise with my students.
Well, were you able to get some eggs?
Tons of eggs.
Now we're going to go to the north end of Assateague. That's really interesting because they're talking about redoing the channel going into Assateague and closing part of the jetty, the south jetty. And we decided to look at it this year to see if horseshoe crabs are using it. We found like 2,000 to 3,000 horseshoe crabs spawning there. So.
The north side of Assateague Island is popular with recreational boaters and spawning crabs alike, and Karl demonstrates how he goes about collecting eggs.
You look for a female that has a male attached, and so what you're going to do is lift that female gently out of the way, and then if you sieve in the sand under her, you should find, there they are, there's some of her eggs. In a normal year in the classroom, we raise them, the kids get to see from egg to usually the 20th molt, and then I bring them back and release them in the spring.
There's one under here.
So 7 and 2, 7 and 3.
Steve and Carly use a simple tool called a transect and show us how they take a subsample to determine crab numbers.
There's so many crabs it would be hard to measure, to count them all on the beach, so what we do is we subsample. We take 1 meter square, and then we measure the beach. The beach is 200 meters long, and we take 6 different samples, and then we can take an average, and then we can calculate how many crabs are on the whole beach.
In the Maryland coastal bays, peak spawning occurs in June, but it goes into July. So unlike the more northern bays like Delaware Bay or the inland bays, their peak sampling occurs in May. 2 of the main things are water temperature. That's one of the biggest factors that kind of triggers the horseshoe crabs to start spawning. In the coastal bays, it's about 18 degrees Celsius, and then it peaks around 21 degrees Celsius. But these guys, I mean, they'll spawn well into August as well. It just won't be as this dense across the area.
Our last stop tonight is the southwest side of Assateague.
I mean, when I first started doing this whole section was solid crabs, just like it was over there.
How long have you been doing this?
Since 2003, so it's been almost 20 years.
Have you noticed anything in the last 20 years?
It's been pretty stable. They just move around a little bit.
But the numbers have remained consistent.
Yeah, pretty much consistent.
This site in particular has less. but it makes up for it on Assateague North side. So, and skimmer is pretty much the same, it seems like, which is great. That's what we want.
Would you say that they're healthy overall?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's good to know. Good to know that in spite of the many hurdles that face the humble horseshoe crab, these living fossils are likely to be around for far longer than we can imagine.